Brought to you by Mint Mobile. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joar, and today is Thursday, October 30th, 2025. And I've got the excellent Alex Dobie all the way from the United Kingdom joining me today. Hi, Alex. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Just moved, so hence why my background is looking a little bit weird, and I have a strange jury-rigged recording setup for this podcast, but it all seems to be going well so far. So
yeah, no, it's great to have you on the show. I am glad that you're able to find the time. We're going to talk about a video you made on XDA about what's going on with Samsung's Galaxy S26 lineup. And we have a bunch of phones to talk about. It's not as busy and crazy as last week where it seemed all the phones came out. But obviously the embargo has lifted for the Oppo, so we'll talk about that a little bit. Some OnePlus news, at least that are relevant to folks in China, but will be relevant to us soon. And then, of course, there's a bunch of other devices. Out of nowhere, Nothing launched a new phone. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, that was a bit random, wasn't it?
Very random. And so, let's dive into it. I think we should start with the Oppo simply because it's kind of the star of the week, right? So
sure.
I have it here. Obviously, folks have seen, I've shown you, I did a quick unboxing on the show before. Here it is in its aramid fake carbon case. This is the case that the adapter mounts on so that you can use the Canon lens thing. I don't have it here with me, the lens, but it's just in my bag somewhere. But I've used it and it's really cool. And I mean, I've kept the phone in the case simply because it's easier to mount this and remove it and stuff. Mm-hmm. But I tend to, especially super thin cases that are very nice and made by the manufacturer, always a great thing. This phone is I would say so far possibly the best phone I've used in 2025. And that's kind of crazy because the Ultra exists, the Oppo Find X9 Ultra, which I have. And of course, we have a bunch of other phones. What are your thoughts from the stuff you've seen? I know you don't have the phone, so.
Yeah, so the thing with Oppo, right, is they do operate on this sort of different cadence for the Ultra. So obviously the Pro, you've got the updated chip from MediaTek, you have all the accessory attachments, but you don't have that 1-inch sensor, right?
Right. That is the only big difference, I think. Of course, the dual telephoto versus a single 200 megapixel 6X. I unfortunately don't have my Ultra here in Vancouver in Canada where I am, but I will be in San Francisco next week, and I'm actually going to try to do some side-by-sides comparing the telephotos. I know the 1-inch sensor is just going to be creamier and more delicious, but I'm not sure it's going to be necessarily that much better because, I mean, I feel like everybody's going to 1/1.2-inch sensors now as default, and the quality of the image processing and the light gathering capabilities of the sensors are pretty much a wash with 1-inch sensors now, right?
For sure. I mean, for 99% of the things you're going to be doing on a phone, you don't need that 1-inch sensor size. And from what I hear, they are still very expensive. Hence why we haven't really seen them in any brands in the West. One of the places where you can kind of tell the difference is if you're using it for content creation, especially
depth of field.
Like thinking depth of field, like that classic sort of over-the-shoulder shot of a device or something like that is where there really is no substitute for that larger sensor size. But that is also where things like telephoto attachment can help as well. And that's something that, a trend that we've seen from all these Chinese brands that I am really liking and hope we see more of next year.
I think for me, the reason I'm saying this, I would probably have picked, as a camera fan and somebody who focuses on camera photography a lot, of course I'm going to prioritize a camera phone as my favorite phone of the year every year.
Sure.
I mean, sometimes it's, there's a lot of good options here. This year is a solid year all around. The Pixel 10 Pro XL is my go-to everyday phone, and the cameras are really solid, but it's Pixel. It's expected. It's familiar. It's warm and cozy and comfortable. I'm not stretching the envelope with that phone, even though that, AI zoom is pretty cool. iPhone, of course, I feel like they've really nailed it this year, especially the Pro. They're proing really hard. They're not holding back. And it feels like, for a Western, North American-centric device, I feel like they've done a good job. Samsung, again, kind of also, we'll talk about that, but also maybe resting on their laurels a little. But I feel that they're still delivering a pretty solid solution. So, but those Chinese phones, including the Honor that you have and a bunch of others. I mean, it's a whole different story. And, Xiaomi, etc. Right? What's your thoughts on that?
It just speaks to different priorities, I think, from these brands. I think your Samsungs, Googles, and definitely Apple have kind of decided that like big jumps in optics from generation to generation don't particularly make sense when so much of the difference comes from the processing and the AI features. And it's actually easier to sell your Western audience on those kinds of things. Whereas in China, it is much more about the raw numbers, right? The number is the thing that matters. And
specs, absolutely. Same with India. But I think there's also a different philosophy here. And I feel like, you have to remember, it's just like Chinese EVs. There's some subsidies at the government level that means that, or through services, right? Through like all the various, mega apps in China that mean that when you buy a phone, it's going to be more affordable than if you buy it in the West at equivalence. And, some people are yelling and screaming right now about the pricing of the Oppo Find X9 Pro in Europe. And I'm like, what did you expect? Look at the specs. What did you expect? This is an Ultra phone, essentially, for all practical purposes. I mean, they're making an Ultra, and God knows how crazy that's going to be, and it'll have the Snapdragon chip instead of the Dimensity. But the reality is this is their moment right now for Oppo of having the best possible phone they can make. And they didn't pull any punches. And that's, I think, the reason there's so much excitement about this phone is because of that teleconverter kit, that Canon, as it were. And I feel like a lot of creators are finally coming to realize that, hey, the Chinese occasionally make camera kits for their phones. We all know that's been the case for a while now, right?
Sure.
Vivo was the first to do the teleconverter. And, I think, of course, Xiaomi's done it, or maybe through a third party, Oppo as well through a third party, like a partnership. But this is the first time.
Moment as well on the Apple side.
This is the first time that we have this, like, kind of almost as a, on a major print, because I think Oppo is bigger than Vivo worldwide, and on a branded Hasselblad co-brand, like the whole thing. And I have to say, that I think makes a big difference. Is it a gimmick? Yeah, look, you're not going to carry this thing around. Me and TK talked about this last week. In fact, I put up a reel on my Instagram about it, how we're like, are you realistically going to carry this thing around with you? Especially with the mounting plate and stuff. It's kind of a bit of a hassle, right? But he made a good point, because his kid, plays in a band, and they play in a field, like it's like big band. So like in a football field or something. And so he needs that reach. And you start getting some digital stuff if you use even the 200 megapixel 3X here is, going to give some compromises. But I feel like it's kind of like, I made that joke on Threads. I feel like it's like Clicks keys, you get a case for your iPhone or Pixel or Razr that has a keyboard. It's a niche, right? Like, you're going to get some people who really want it and use it. But I feel like for all of us, it's a curiosity. I'm on board because I'm a camera phone person. Of course, I'm going to, from time to time. But even I feel like the practicality of just using this as it is right now is probably the best approach.
And I would argue that the difference isn't between carrying it and not carrying it. It's between carrying it and like carrying your actual camera.
Oh, good point. Yeah, that's a very good argument, because at that point, like an RX 100 would probably be maybe a better choice,
Potentially, yeah. I mean, the RX 100 still, you're kind of limited in like processing and even zoom levels. I think even the current one is not.
You're right. The optical isn't
great
that strong.
Zoom range. Yeah.
But maybe a small mirrorless,
anything with an interchangeable lens, right, is going to be just worlds more inconvenient to use.
But there is that wow factor, and overall, this phone, I feel, hits all the the sweet spots. The battery is 7,500 milliamp hour. It charges at up to
insane,
what is it, 80 or 100 watt. Wired, 50 watt wireless. It's only 8 millimeter thick, which is pretty reasonable. I do have to say, and I want to bring that in there, that last year's Oppo Find X9 Pro was a phenomenal phone all around. It didn't have the trick of the teleconverter Canon thing, but it had a really good camera system, and it was so thin. Like, it felt so svelte because of the 2.5D glass, right? And the rim of it was much thinner. This is an iPhone type design, so it's got the slab sides, the flat screen, and I kind of feel like this is a bit more of a boring camera pod. Like I like the design language, kind of has that Pixel 10 Pro Fold, 9 Pro Fold vibe going, and we've seen pictures of OnePlus. I mean, I'm not supposed to have seen them, but you've all seen them, and it looks kind of the same for the 15. So I think that's where they're going. But that round thing they were doing, I really like to me, like the poster child phone for that design was the OnePlus Open, Oppo Find N3, whatever you want to call it. But then they did that on the Find X series for like the X8 series at least. And I like that,
I could kind of take it or leave it. I mean, my criticism of that kind of camera hump is that you're kind of you're opting out of designing it, right? It's always going to be bigger than it needs to be just because of the shape, and you're kind of opting out of just actually designing the thing to fit all the components in an elegant way, where I would argue that, and especially in a foldable, right? I have the Magic V5 here, and just the extra depth, and it's like they just decided to opt out of even trying with that kind of design. I don't know. I'm a big fan of the square design.
Yeah, I feel like this iPhoneification of the Chinese phones is not good. Like I really think that they should have stayed with their own thing, because now Pixel is an iPhone.
Yeah,
Samsung is an iPhone. Like, come on, guys! Like get your own personality going here. Like there is a need for that, and it's the same with software. Like I'm starting to really get annoyed with, for a long time the Chinese phones did the iPhone copy, and then we railed on them a bit, and they kind of tried to create their own personality for a while. It was kind of good. It felt more like Android, and now we're kind of going back to this. To be fair, iOS and Android have been converging over the years. Definitely, there's definitely some overlap there, and it's fine. Some features are great, and you want them on both OSs. But that's the only thing about this phone that to me is a negative. Like the Dimensity 9500 is super slick and fast and amazing. There's tons of RAM and storage. The camera is absolutely rock solid. The image quality, the color science, the general vibe of this phone when you take photos is just, it's better than last year's Find X8 series. Is it better than the Ultra? I need to put them side by side, but it's really impressive. And big battery, fast charging. Like that's why I feel like it's the best phone I've played with this year, And
I guess the battery is worth drilling down into a little bit, because the reason we have that insane capacity is because of new silicon carbon technology, and that's something
exactly.
That is I don't think there are any non-Chinese brands using it right now.
I mean, again, another rant we had last week with TK was like, and I put it up again as a clip on my Insta, is like, silicon carbon has got to come to Apple, Samsung, and Google. But they've been, at least Google has with me, very vocal that they do not necessarily believe that's the way to go. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? Like, you're not.
There are trade-offs, right? But if you,
yes, but they've been resolved. Like,
I mean, I guess if you're looking, Google is planning software, planning their devices like 8 years out.
But that's not realistic. People do not like this whole thing that Apple started is an Apple thing. And I don't even think Apple people use their phones for 7 years anymore. Like, I think it's a noble thing. I don't want us to stop making phones sustainable. But I think we're all collectively living in like a alternate reality that doesn't make sense when we say phones should last for 7 years. Let's get real. These aren't cars.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's not necessarily going to be the original owner using them in 7 or 8 years' time. I mean, okay,
Fair.
7 or 8 probably is extreme, but, maybe half that. It's not, too crazy to think that someone would still be using it.
Yeah, but the counter argument is that when you have 7,500 milliamp hours, as I've said many times on the show, and again, I did a reel of this, it's like, it's funny because we're hitting all the points that we hit last week, but like, 20 to 80, you're never going to charge full cycle anymore. And you're going to get still 2.5 days of battery life. And if you have,
that's
even
fair,
if you charge to 100, you get 3 days of battery life out of the phone. You're charging less cycles.
And I wonder then if Samsung and Apple do eventually go silicon carbon, if we kind of have to think more about whether we need that full 100%, because a lot of people, like, psychologically, they think about it as just it is a chunk of energy that you use,
But so
they
that's
don't
what I'm
necessarily know
thinking.
about. Yeah.
I can see Samsung and Apple and Google giving you a day and a half instead of 3 days of battery life by putting a silicon carbon battery of a large capacity in your phone, not as large as this, but maybe say a 6500, and then making a thinner phone and then software blocking the 10% top and bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So that you still get the same daily, nightly charging. You still get roughly the same battery life, 2 days on a light use and a day on a heavy use, but you're no longer putting a lot of strain on your battery. But that's my point. Silicon carbon, even though, yes, it less charge cycles, although that's to be argued, because there are some silicon carbon batteries out there that promise like 1200, 1600 charge cycles. So, but the point is, assuming the charge cycle is an issue, then why don't we do what EVs do? EVs all have like 10% top and bottom to preserve the battery. So now we have that buffer, and you get even possibly more reliability on your battery system long term. I don't know. I think that this is something that, so I mean, the whole point is that Samsung, Google, and Apple should do silicon carbon, and they'd better soon.
Mm-hmm. I think, didn't Samsung just buy a silicon carbon battery manufacturer? Did I just imagine that? Maybe they did.
I don't know. I mean, I think they should get on that. But back to this Oppo, I think that the battery life is incredible. Like, I'm literally, because that's light use right now, because I have multiple phones on me, and I'm like shooting photos mostly and doing benchmarks every now and then. And, it's like I'm getting 2.5, 3 days without even a sweat. It's insane. And it's a delightful phone. It's lightweight. It's got a camera button here, yeah, I mean, I don't like that you replace the slider with again, copying the Apple action button, whatever you want to call a quick button.
Yeah.
But the slider had some physicality that I really liked. Again, it's a one-trick pony, right? Whereas this can be reprogrammed to do whatever you want. But you do not need to launch the camera with this, because, well, I would argue that every Android phone should launch the camera with a double tap of the power lock button, but that's just me. I don't like remapping my power lock key to the assistant personally. For me, it's long press for the power menu and double tap for the camera. That's kind of how I use it. If I want the assistant, I just call it. Like, I just say, the keyword, and hopefully one of my phones, one of many, pops up with an answer, right? So I don't know. I feel like this is potentially the best phone I've used, of the Chinese, at least in general for sure, but I'm talking about the Chinese. You could argue there's Xiaomi 15 Ultra. There is, Oppo Find X8 Ultra. There's the Vivo phones, which I never got, so I know they're amazing. We talked about the X300 Pro last week, because TK has one and he reviewed it for us. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you feel, like, I know you don't have these either. So how do you feel in the hierarchy of things here? Do you think, from what you've read and seen, that the Vivo is a better choice than the Oppo, since they came out around the same time, have the same processor, have a teleconverter kit,
I think for me, like, when two devices are so similar like that, the difference to me would probably come down to software. Pretty much with where Oppo is right now, and with ColorOS basically being Oxygen OS with a couple changes, that it's going to be a much sort of smoother experience using stuff that's actually designed for the apps and services we use in the West, as opposed to something that is a bit more China-centric like Vivo.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I haven't really used the new, Fun Touch replacement, Origin, whatever it's called. So I don't have a point of reference. But
just the fact that it was at one point called Fun Touch should tell you everything you need to know about.
What a terrible name.
Yeah.
But I've been I think of all the Chinese OS right now, I think that ColorOS / Oxygen OS / Realme UI are my favorite. They are still let you decouple the quick buttons from the notification tray. You can combine them back. Like, Xiaomi doesn't let you do that on HyperOS anymore. You're stuck with the iPhone way of doing things, which is so unintuitive to me, even though I do have some iPhones. But, like, I think overall this is great. This phone, like, thumbs up. I think you should wait another week or two for the OnePlus 15 reviews. Those of you in the West, especially in North America, Canada, the US here, because, importing a phone is a totally easy thing to do. And you will be able to get a great experience with this Oppo, but perhaps you want the ability to get, the support and the customer service and the replacement of screens and batteries and whatever. And in that case, you're trying to decide right now. So wait a little bit longer, because we'll jump in the OnePlus right now, and it's coming November 13th. But once you have that point of reference, you'll see that, I'm pretty sure for me it would be the Oppo, simply because of the better telephoto. We know that the specs are different there, but a lot of the rest is, from what we know from the Chinese version of the OnePlus 15, very similar, right? So of course you're also getting a Snapdragon chip. Maybe that matters to you because you play games or something. I don't know. To me, the Dimensity plays games great. I don't have any issue with it whatsoever. So I don't know, but maybe wait. But right now I feel like this is definitely possibly the best phone I've used. It's hard to tell, but it's close.
Wow.
Yeah, it's close. And it's because I like the OS, and it's because the camera is incredible, and it's because it's got this the massive battery. It's like, because as I said, Oppo Find X8 Pro last year, or X8 Ultra this year. Great phones, but the battery life isn't as good as this. And then that just changes the game,
And something else I found using other like silicon carbon high spec batteries is, of course, it scales up to heavy use as well. So if you're out taking photos all day, maybe even as recently as like 3-4 years ago, you were pretty much guaranteed to run down that battery pretty quickly. A few hours of taking photos, video,
you were done. Yep.
Yeah. That's not the case when you've got that extra capacity to dip back into.
Yeah. No, it's a game changer. And that's kind of part of the reason I feel like I have to pick this phone, because it's like, camera wise, I'm sure you can get the equivalent out of the previous Ultra phones from the Chinese, especially, the Vivo that has the teleconverter, right? But in the Vivo, the X300, if you're looking at getting the X300 Pro, it doesn't have that battery life. It has a good battery life, but it's not a 7,000-ish milliamp hour battery, right? So you do give up a little bit there. But yeah, I think other than the design, that's a little boring because it's a little too iPhone-like. I have no major complaints here. Wow, solid. So OnePlus 15 officially coming November 13th. Obviously, I have one. I cannot show it to you, but you will find lots of stuff because the Chinese model is out, and I don't want to make any assumptions because TK and I were clear about this last week too. It's like, it could be different, the US model from the Chinese model. This has happened before. But we know the Chinese specs, so go check them out. And we know that there are some photos out there. I've taken some. We're allowed to post photos. I'm not allowed to critique the photos. So, it's kind of hard when I have this Oppo right next to me as well, right? But you can draw your own conclusions based on those Chinese specs and what you know of the Oppo, right? I think that you're going to be very happy with the OnePlus as well. But personally, I'm waiting to see what happens in terms of support with carriers and stuff like that, because I think that for this market, it really matters. In the UK, you get OnePlus at all there? Even?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, and the carrier situation is, I believe they were with, in terms of like being available on contract. I believe they work with 3 for a while.
Okay.
So it has been much more like a direct sales.
Same here, and that's the thing. Like,
yeah.
I'm worried. Like, they had a T-Mobile partnership for a long time, and you could buy them in stores for a while from the carriers, but that dropped and stopped around the 11 or something, and then. Yeah. I don't know if this is coming back, so again, stay tuned for that. But I think that if you want to see some pretty pictures taken on OnePlus phones, I'll be posting some on my Insta, and then because I'm allowed to, and check out. Like, I'll link to a GSM Arena. They did a camera run. I'm sure that XTA. I don't know if you guys covered the OnePlus there, but one of the Valnet properties probably has Android Police, I suppose.
I think I'm allowed to say Rich Woods has one.
Okay.
So.
But yeah, so you'll see some content on various pubs, and Android Police, which is another one of your kind of sister pubs, has it for sure. So check that out. And the other thing to talk about is that OnePlus does have another phone that they launched in China, which is the Ace 6. Now, the Ace is always ends up like last year's Ace 5 ended up being the OnePlus 13R. And that's kind of always been the case. If you look back, in the previous versions, the Ace is very similar. At least there are some differences, but so we have heard zero zip, not even rumors of a 15R. So last year the 13R launched at the same time as the 13 in January at CES. So the question here becomes: are we getting a 15R later on? Maybe in the new year, because remember, this is a kind of a first. And I think, OnePlus was very excited when they pitched me this phone. They were like, hey, this is the first time we can give you a flagship, our best phone of the year, right before the holidays. You can buy it for Christmas. And that's a good point. Like, for those of you who, I wanted to gift this to a family member or yourselves as a Christmas holiday gift, yeah.
Yeah, and especially compared to last year, right? With, early January launches always feel a bit weird.
Oh, it's so hard.
Yeah, it's hard. It's tough to sell anything around that time. And not only that, but being able to bring this to market so soon, so long before Samsung, in particular. There are even rumors, and I guess we'll get to S26 a little bit later, but there are even rumors as of this past week that some of the S26 models may be delayed until March. Don't know how accurate that will turn out to be, but just the fact that that's in contention, could give OnePlus and Oppo or anyone else a pretty decent, strong lead. Obviously, there is a lot more to the competition between these two brands than just the timing of an individual release, but it does make Samsung seem like they are, even further behind the technical curve, especially as we're talking about battery technology and all this other stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. So what's interesting about the Ace here is that it does have a slightly bigger screen, than the OnePlus 15. So it's 6.83 inches. It's a 1220p-ish class display, so between 1080p and Quad HD. It's 165 hertz as well. It's AMOLED LTPO, so no reduction in quality here. And it's running a Snapdragon 8 Elite instead of an 8 Elite Gen 5. It has a 50 megapixel main camera with OIS and a kind of detuned 8 megapixel ultra wide. No telephoto. But battery is 7800, so it's even bigger, 120 watt wired. Doesn't look like it has wireless. But it's the pricing in China is about 310 euros, which is very competitive for an 8 Elite phone. So if you're looking just for a phone that's not necessarily a camera monster, but it's just about playing, essentially kind of, I think of it as a gaming phone in a way, an affordable gaming phone, this might be it. Because the battery is huge, processor is really fast, tons of RAM and storage, starts at 12 and 256, goes up from there, UFS 4.1, LPDDR5X. At that price point, you're getting basically a solid gaming platform. So 8 Elite, 7,800 milliamp hour battery. If they got good thermals, it's going to be pretty amazing. So
for sure, I'm
excited about it.
Potentially, one reason why they might not be able to is that battery. There are although you're still as far as I understand,
it's 2 cells though, right?
It's 2 cells. You should be fine. But I've had companies tell me before that they can't because of the capacity. So who knows? But even if they had to lower that capacity a little bit to sell in other countries, you've still got a really solid phone for the money, even if the price is, as you say, like $50 to $100 more than it is in China.
Yeah, I think OnePlus and Oppo, generally speaking, and Realme are always doing dual cells. When you see anything that 80 watt or higher, it's dual cell, right, for charging.
I'm looking at an image here on, I think, GSM Arena, and yeah, it looks like 2 cells.
All right, cool. Well, I'll put a link to that. And then the other thing that they've announced, the other thing that's rumored is a OnePlus Turbo. And from what we gather, it's almost identical to the A6, like cameras and general specs except for the processor. That goes down to the Snapdragon 8 Gen 5, not 8 Elite or 8 Elite Gen 5, but 8 Gen 5. This is a chip. Oh God, yeah, I know. Don't even. In case you're listening with audio right now, Alex is rolling his eyes really hard, and I don't blame him because I'll let you take this one over, Alex. Tell me your thoughts on that naming stuff.
It's just I don't know. It takes skill to have branding that is this confusing because you have obviously your base Snapdragon 8 Elite, then you have the Snapdragon 8 Elite Extreme Edition, which I believe is like a higher binned.
Yeah, it's the one that's in the Samsung phones. They call it, you know, for Galaxy, whatever. It's just.
And then you have the 8 Elite Gen 5, which is the actual tip-top flagship, and then you have the 8 Gen 5, which is something else.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember if they've published any details on that, if it's Orion based or if it's the old CPU core based.
That would at least slightly make sense.
Like if it's an 8 Gen 4, you know, kind of like, you know, there's an 8 Plus Gen 4, I mean, you know, like.
Remember when they were doing gens because the 3 number branding was too confusing? Remember how this was supposed to save us from that?
We love you, Qualcomm, but this naming stuff, ouch. Anyway, so the OnePlus Turbo is again going to be detuned further, but it's interesting that the rumors exist for this because it's like, I'm thinking India right now. And the other rumor on this
could
is
well be, yeah.
8,000 milliamp hour battery. 8,000. Oh, Lord. Wow. Anyway, so, you know, bunch of OnePlus stuff. Stay tuned. We'll have you covered for the 15 coming up. So I'm actually very excited to share my thoughts with you about it. And then I want to talk about what's up with Samsung. You did an entire video on what's up with Samsung. So obviously I'm going to link to it in the show notes, but give us the abridged 10-minute version of that if you can, because what are your thoughts? Just to start with, we are hearing strong rumors that the Samsung Galaxy S26 series is going to be delayed compared to last year. That's the first thing I read. And then we're hearing strong rumors that it's not going to have the Snapdragon chips by default. That's where I'm starting, because I didn't actually watch your entire video, because I kind of want to get you to talk about it.
So there are lots of rumors doing the rounds about this next gen of Samsung phones. Not all of them as believable as each other. So firstly on the release date, yeah, that's I think is a single sourced rumor on that coming out of China. Specifically relates to when they'll be entering mass production. So the rumor is that the smaller 2 models won't enter mass production in time for a January launch, but the Ultra will. So potentially you could see something there where like maybe they still do a launch event in January, but only the Ultra is available in January. Odd. Kind of a little bit odd, but, you know, it happens. And again, if the one that really matters flagship-wise is going to be the Ultra anyway, so it's perhaps you could say it's not that big of a deal. However, by the time it's launching, especially in the US, the chip that is in that is going to be a good 6 months old, which is pretty wild to think about. It's a long time.
Wait, so they're putting an Exynos in the Ultra?
In some countries, supposedly.
I don't see them doing that in North America.
I don't see them doing that in North America either, unless they've really, got something special on their hands this time that they can't do with Snapdragon.
Or they have an Exynos chip that's ready to go that we don't know about.
Potentially, and that we have seen like leaks, purported specs on Exynos 2600 from some of the Korean press, indicating that, especially in terms of AI and GPU, it's beating Apple right now and beating Apple by a considerable margin. That could be a reason for them to maybe step away from Qualcomm. But I don't know. It's such an established relationship. I don't see it happening. I still think. I mean, I think
the carriers in the US, call me old-fashioned, but you know, I'm not a big fan of carriers in general worldwide, unless you're maybe in those markets where it's highly competitive. But I don't think they'd be very, very happy if a flagship Samsung phone didn't have a Qualcomm chip, at least the flagship.
That said, they did Exynos in the Flip last year.
Yeah, but the Flip is not a flagship. The flagship was the Z Fold 7. The Z Fold 7 stole that show. True. We all know that. And I think in that sense, I feel like they're going to have a Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 in there.
Yeah, I could see it going either way. I think they seem to be behaving as if they are really confident in this generation of Exynos. So usually, being in Europe, we'd go back and forth from one year to the next.
Yeah,
we're going to get the good chip or the bad chip.
I can see you guys getting Exynos. Absolutely.
Oh, 100%, yeah. And more recently, they would, and I believe this happened last year.
S24, right?
S25. They had, or S20, or maybe both. It's tough to keep track of. But the Ultra got the Snapdragon, and the smaller two got Exynos because they're not quite tip-top flagships. It's interesting. It's taken a long time for Samsung to get Exynos up to where it is really decent and competitive. But again, with the US market, you would think Qualcomm just has that locked down in terms of network stuff. So.
And then they're going to surprise us all and put a MediaTek Dimensity in that.
I would be totally fine with that.
I'd be totally fine with that. To be clear, Samsung has put MediaTek chips in their phones before. It's and not a long time ago, pretty recently. So I can't remember what market that was in, but I did read that they put some Dimensity 7000 or something in there. And I'm like, oh wow, that's unusual. But you never know. So I mean, what about the other rumor? The other rumor that keeps yo-yoing back and forth, because GSM Arena just published yesterday or something, another rumor that contradicts the initial rumor. The initial rumor being that the Edge doesn't sell or didn't sell, the S25 Edge, and that because of that, they're not going to make an S26 Edge. And now the counter rumor is, no, that was not true. They're making a 26 Edge. So I don't know. I feel like they should. I feel like we need to continue trying out this thin form factor with silicon carbon, though. Hello.
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's been pretty wild watching this sort of pendulum of rumors over the past month or so. Like you said, originally started with the lineup potentially being S26, S26 Edge because they wanted to kill off the Plus. They expected the current Edge to outsell the current Plus, which it didn't, but that was the plan that it would, and that would be the successor, and of course the Ultra at the high end. Then the rumor was that actually, no, the Edge had sold so poorly that they were discontinuing production of it and also cancelling the subsequent Edge. And now potentially they're not doing that, and they're going back to the actual 4-device plan that we had this year that also includes the Edge. And I think if that happens, it probably would make sense. And from Samsung's side, I can see them continuing to do an Edge just as long as Apple is doing an Edge, just to have something in that space. And especially if they are starting to look at silicon carbon, because they're more likely to get into that area before either Apple or Google are. I think it's worth them keeping at it. And I like the S25 Edge. It wasn't without its issues. It was a fine phone. I think giving up after a year would be a mistake.
All it needs is a silicon carbon battery, and it's a phenomenal phone. It's all it needs right now as it exists. And the Air, I have it right here. It's actually recording backup audio for us in this really super thin case, which I really like. This phone is phenomenal, except the battery. It's fine. It lasts a day. Apple's not lying. I've checked, but it's a single camera is what kills it. I mean, to me, it's I can accept that I can only zoom up to 4 or 5x with usable results. That's the case of any phone that doesn't have a telephoto, and there's a lot of them. Mm-hmm. But the lack of ultra wide, you can't go back. You just can't. There's a wall behind you. You're done. You need that ultra wide, and that to me, the fact that with all of its might in engineering, Apple made that choice. It blows my mind. And the mono speaker. Come on, guys. Seriously, if Samsung can do it at 0.2 millimeters more, you have no excuse. You're Apple. You should be out Samsunging Samsung all day long with your tech. And you have MagSafe, which is magnets. Yes.
For sure. And the cynic in me does wonder if that's potentially a bit of planned obsolescence for next year, so they have something.
You're right.
A visible upgrade to sell you on the Air 2 next year, especially given next year is going to be your 20th anniversary iPhone. You're also going to get the Fold potentially. You could imagine, we made the Air even better, and now we got this foldable, and now we have the zero bezels on the Pro.
And I think we have to take into account the mindset of most iPhone users. And, this is not me trying to be offensive at all. Like, I want to be clear that I have no problems with this mindset. And the mindset is that they upgrade very often. A lot. Some of them either don't upgrade for 4 or 5 years, or they upgrade very often. And they are on like that upgrade program that Apple has, right? So I think if you're an Air customer, you're probably already, you have the means because of the cost to be on that upgrade program, and you're like, okay, I'm going to try this out this year, and then you're like, I really liked it, but it's missing those things. And then they come out with an Air 2 that has those things. You're going to be like, well, yeah. And then these things are going to get recycled,
We saw that, I think, with the first gen Apple Watch and just really lousy battery life. And then they finally improved that in the second gen. And I think, we'll see next year, as we did back then, a lot of first gen people upgrading to that second gen where they actually, get it right and add the things that were obviously missing from the first round.
Yeah. And I think you're right. That could be not planned obsolescence, but kind of like, let's see how far we can go with this form factor. And yeah, we might be able to put an ultra wide and a second speaker, but it's not worth our time. We need to release this thing. Let's get it out, and then let's see how it pans out from there, right? But a part of me also feels like the mono speaker is really not a huge deal. But the lack of ultra wide, I think, is a huge. I feel like there are a lot of people who went with the base 17 or upgraded to a 17 Pro non-max because they wanted the Air, but they're like, I can't live without the ultra wide. Whereas with Samsung, you don't have to make that compromise. You're only making the compromise of battery life, which is manageable, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you can't manage the lack of ultra wide. That's not manageable. You can't fix that.
I think a lot of people would have gone into the Apple store, played with the Air, thought it's really cool, realized they're going to put a case on it anyway, and probably gone with the regular 17.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Samsung. So what is, with your informed research that you did for this video, what do you think is what we know now you think is gonna happen?
I'm not sure even Samsung is fully aware of what it's going to do now. I think the other side of this mess was whether or not there was going to be a Pro in the mix, whether that proness was just going to be a Pro in name only, and actually it's the base
Plus, model, right?
Just base, yeah. I think probably Samsung being Samsung and being relatively conservative, I think probably the lineup will look broadly as it did this year. We'll get probably an Edge, and it'll come later.
Right.
And that we're looking at another year probably of pretty iterative upgrades for this line, and the next super cycle is probably going to be at least a year away.
Yeah, the S27. But I feel like I am not convinced, knowing the carriers and the US and Canadian markets, that we're going to get the Ultra before. I think they will not dare to do that. I think that there is that halo effect, right? People see the Ultra and they want the Ultra, but then they go to the store and like, oh, this is too big. Oh, I don't need the S Pen. I'll get the Plus or the Pro or the base even, right? Because I have got small hands. I think they need to launch them, at least availability at the same time, and show them to us, the media, at the same time. I think it's going to be odd if that doesn't happen.
The other wildcard possibility could be if they do go Exynos everywhere, and if that is enough of a differentiator that they hold it back and kind of use that as the reason. They kind of anchor it to that being the chip for 2026.
Yeah, but I also think we have to... We have to take into account geopolitics as well. I feel like there's some potential issues here on supply chains and on tariffs that are affecting. Because remember, I'm again, what, my audience is global. I'm based in North America, but I'm not North America centric in my coverage. But I do have to think about, where does Samsung sell a lot of its phones? Well, South Korea, and a bit in Europe, and a lot in North America, and almost nothing in China. And then there's India, but I think that's not for the S series. It's more like other models, right? So realistically, they don't want to mess the North American market at all. Like, they want to really get this tight and right. So the problem we have right now is that we have a government shutdown in the US. They can't certify phones. Like the FCC cannot approve phones right now because they're not getting paid. They're not working. So they're on furlough. They're just at home, twiddling their thumbs, not getting a paycheck. And I feel bad for these folks because it's none of their doing. It's just because we have a crappy regime. And there they are, not getting paid, worrying about their next paycheck and paying their bills. And we're not getting S series. Damn it. I actually, no, I'm joking, but I think that it's possible the S26 might be delayed simply because they can't get certification in the biggest market for them.
You reckon they'd delay globally to launch?
Perhaps not. I think they would launch globally and show us Exynos models at that point. But it would look odd. I think they wouldn't launch until they have a date for North America. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I can even see them paying the FCC test people, saying, hey, like, is there any way we can pay you so you can do this?
Yeah.
You know, or something. Because again, anything can happen in this in the US right now. In terms of, I'm pointing at it because it's literally, I'm looking at south right now from Vancouver here. Is any like this? It's so corrupt right now. Who knows? It's like, as long as I get the FCC certification, they can launch. And I'm not saying Samsung would do anything shady. I'm just saying like, it's pretty critical for a manufacturer. Like, I am sure that the folks at Apple and the folks at Samsung and even the folks at OnePlus that have to get the 15 Pro is probably certified before the shutdown, which is fine. Yeah. But like, that's a problem right now if you're trying to come to this market.
I think if you're looking at Samsung, which basically has country level resources and is very well connected, I think they probably could figure out a way. If it gets to the stage where it looks like it's really going to happen and the shutdown extends into next year, then I think they'll pull something out of the bag. I mean,
the other thing they have as an option potentially is the CSA, the Canadian Safety Association, that is like the UL equivalent. And I don't know if they do radio testing, but if they do, and we have our own certification in Canada, they're probably very close to the US. And it might be that the FCC might sign off on the fact that it was approved by the Canadians.
Okay. Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, they might say, look, we'll fully test them later, but you get to check box because you got the CE mark and you got the CSA mark and you got the, whatever it is in China mark. And you need to launch this. We'll let it be.
I think if it was anyone besides like a Samsung or an Apple, they'd probably be SOL. Like if it was OnePlus, then no, you just got to wait until FCC's working again.
Crazy. Let's jump to the Nothing Phone 3a Lite. I did not have this on my bingo card. Okay, let's just be clear here. This is a CMF by Nothing Phone 2 Pro without a telephoto, spec-wise. That's what it is. Same display, same kind of battery, same everything. It just, instead of the telephoto, which by the way is really, really great, that CMF by Nothing Phone 2 Pro is wow. One of my favorite phones of the year. The cameras are actually really good on that phone. And that telephoto is actually really solid. It's a real telephoto. It's not some BS. So the fact that they're detuning that is kind of vexing me because this is not a CMF phone. This is a Nothing phone. And it does have OIS on the main lens, which the CMF phone doesn't have. So you lose the tele, but you get stabilization, better stabilization. That's basically, and of course you get a single LED in the back for glyph. Come on. I don't know.
I guess do we have, just looking at pricing for this thing here, $249, €249, €249.
That's the same price as, this is the same price as, I think it's $279 for the CMF Phone 2 Pro. And depending on the storage here, it's $279 as well, US.
This to me looks like a phone that was made to use up parts in a bin.
Absolutely. And look, I'm not, I just want to be clear. I am happy. Enough. I'm happy this exists. Like, I'm not upset about it. I'm just like, it wasn't on my bingo card. I'm trying to understand. And I'm like, it's a bit weird that their lesser phone from their lesser brand has a telephoto and this doesn't. I kind of feel like they should have almost rebranded the CMF Nothing Phone 2 Pro and put glyphs in the back and the industrial design change. That would have been almost more sense to me than removing the telephoto, adding OIS to the main sensor, because that's the only difference I can see on paper between these two phones. Is it awesome? Yes. Do I love it the way it looks? Absolutely. They're sending me one. Sadly, it's not the white one. It's the black one. I don't mind that, but it's generally, it's more striking to have the glyph type design on in a lighter color, in a gray or white, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Stay tuned. What do you think? Like, other than part spinning, like, do you think there's a market for this? Do you think it's for India? Because that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like that. Again, I don't think we should read too much into this phone's existence, besides the fact that nothing probably had this combination of parts available through due to sales or lack of sales of other models. It just feels like the supply chain has kind of just made this phone happen by itself.
It just materialized.
It just kind of, but they had the parts to make it. Obviously, the design doesn't happen by itself, but it's like, well, nothing is a small brand. They got to make money. They have leftover parts that otherwise wouldn't be going into another product. This is, I think we saw HTC in the sort of the latter days of them making phones where they were up against it financially, that they had to, you have like some random Desire phone or whatever that just had like a suspiciously very familiar collection of bits and pieces from other HTCs, and it's just part of the business.
Nah, I get it. I'm happy about this. I'm always happy to get a Nothing or CMF phone come in. And the fact that they literally sent me the press release, and then I got another email 2 minutes later saying, "Oh, here's your shipping info for your phone." I'm like, "Oh, wait a minute, what?" That's awesome. Thank you. So stay tuned. I'll have some photos and some content, hopefully on like next week or whenever. That doesn't look like there's an embargo on this either, so I don't know what's going on there. Moto Edge 70 is out in Europe. We've talked about the Moto X70 Air for the Chinese market a couple of weeks ago. This is a 6mm thin, so not quite as thin as the iPhone Air or the Galaxy S25 Edge, but close, from Moto, with a silicon carbon battery, which is really great, has good capacity on there, and now available in your markets. Is it come to the UK at all?
I believe it is, yep. This phone wasn't really on my radar personally, but, So
it's Snapdragon 7 Gen 4, so solid mid-ranger, 68-watt wire charging, 15-watt wireless. It has a 4,800 milliamp hour battery, which for a 6mm thin phone is pretty impressive, solid. Yeah. I mean, remember, that's more than some of the flagships out there from Samsung today.
And you've got what should be the 7 series is usually pretty efficient.
I love this green color. I'll link to a GSM Arena post as usual. They're kind of my news source where they show the different colors. There's a green color with this kind of yellow gold accent, and even that they're kind of gray color with blue. I love the accents on this. This is really styling. And the camera pod kind of like it ramps up to it. It's really cool. 120 hertz OLED display at 1220p. It's 6.67 inch, so it's not massive in size, and it's going to be thinnish, so it's good. Like, of course, it comes with lots of storage and RAM. 12 gigs is the base, I think, and 256, which is, nice. Look, this is great. It's got, of course, water resistance, and it's mil-spec 810H, which should be pretty rugged, like a lot of Motos.
Do you class sign me up. I guess you class this as an Air competitor, an Edge competitor.
Correct. I mean, sort of mid-range specs. Yeah, I think you get better battery and a lesser processor. Oh wait, the camera is dual 50 megapixel, so you get an ultra wide and a main at 50, and another 50 megapixel in the front. It's a little pricey at €800, but that comes with 512 gigs. So yeah. I don't know. I think this is great. I'm in. I'll ping Moto and see if I can get one. I'm sure there'll be a US model of it at some point. It'll just probably be called Moto Edge, because last year's 60 Edge that you guys got, we never got the Pro. We just got the regular. And it was called the Moto 60 Edge, I believe. So, yeah. Check that out.
Interesting. Again, you got that Motorola software update track record that's not looking too hot, but the phone itself looks pretty
Well,
sharp.
at least the initial software will be good because I like Moto's software. It's pretty solid. Just too bad, as you said, the updates are a little lackadaisical.
Mhm.
Okay, speaking of thin phones and Airs and Edges, and it's interesting actually they didn't call the Moto Edge 70 Air, but Moto Edge 70. I would have added the Air to that just to nail it in. We have, of course, Huawei wasn't going to set this one up and just like be there and say, hi, this is nice. We're not doing anything ourselves. So obviously this one was on my bingo card that Huawei would make an Air competitor, and it's leaked now. And do we know the thickness? I don't see that anywhere in the article.
Not seeing it. To me, it just looks like one half of the Honor foldable.
Correct.
Because he's still got that big old circular camera hump on the back.
I mean, does it look hot? Yes, it does. It's the closest thing to looking hot to an iPhone Air, which makes me happy. But whoa, 6.9-inch display, that's big. That's a little too big.
Yeah, that's like Pro Max level. I mean, it could be interesting. It gives them more space for battery, more space for cooling. Again, with it being Huawei, you'd imagine it's going to be running their own silicon, which is still not up to the level of anything out of Korea or Taiwan. So I would be very interested to see what they actually managed to cram into there in terms of battery capacity, but also what you actually get out of that capacity given where they are in terms of their SoCs. I'm
actually excited to see, like, I have no doubt the battery will be silicon carbon and it'll be great battery life. This is Huawei we're talking about. They're, they're one of the top engineering wise, phone makers in the world. There's no doubt about it. What I'm interested to see is with that 6.9-inch display, if it's rumored to be true, can they put better cameras? Can this be the first Air phone that doesn't compromise on camera performance at all? Like matches and rivals the best flagships.
I'm reading.
Not necessarily the X9 Pro that I have from Oppo here, right? The Find, but maybe like, meet us where the US sold flagships are in terms of camera quality.
I mean, I'm trying to make out camera details here. It's a little bit hard to tell, but it looks like there could be. It's at least 3. Put it that way. At least 3, possibly with some other sensors also below it. Supposedly, main sensor being a 1 of 1.3 incher, which is like your standard size for an Android flagship.
Yeah, but the good news of this is that the other Huawei company out there, aka Honor, is probably going to make one of those.
Probably, yeah.
Yep.
I would expect to see something very similar next year. And again, for it to basically look like one half of the device I'm holding up here for people who can watch the
Magic V5 from Honor, one of the best folding phones ever made.
It is fantastic.
It's phenomenal. Cool. Well, listen, I think we've covered everything. This was a great week for me because it's like, on one hand, bingo card achieved, the Huawei Air phone. On the other hand, bingo card, what the hell? Nothing Phone 3A Lite. Wow, what a delight. There's nothing I love better than a phone that completely didn't get rumored or leaked. I mean, there were some, a few days in advance of this, there were a few leaks that were coming out on this. But the fact that we just get a random new phone, and also I have a thing for affordable phones. I just love the idea that you get a phone that has really solid experience. Nothing generally delivers that. The CMF phone are really fantastic. That just cost less. And so I'm very happy that we got a random unexpected phone this week. And then on top of that, your research and your video on the S26, I think it's really interesting to see where this is going, because I feel like we're going to have more of this happening, this kind of delays through all the geopolitics that are happening right now.
Yeah, and Samsung themselves do seem to be in a much more sort of reactionary mood these days. I think they're going to be very aware of the competition, and especially seeing what other brands are doing in the ultra thin space. And I think as they're looking at something to take on Apple in 2027, that's going to be a big year for Apple. There, Samsung is going to need a big response to that. So even though it is potentially looking like another fairly boring, fairly iterative year for the Galaxy S, I got a feeling that might change in
It's
the
got
next
to.
year.
I mean, the Z Fold 7, reset things in a really good way. And I'm hoping we're going to see something like that with the S line at some point,
So that kind of thinking has to reach the rest of the line.
And so stay tuned for our OnePlus 15 coverage once the embargo lifts. And then go buy an Oppo Find X9 Pro if you have the money and you want the best phone of 2025. I'm calling it right now. You can do it. Go out there, get it. Especially those of you who are not in North America listening right now. Oh, this phone. Yum, yum, yum. Tasty, delicious goodness. Seriously. All right. Alex, tell folks where they can find you, where you write or rather make videos and all that stuff.
So you can find me at Alex Dobie on all the social things. You can find most of my work over on YouTube at XDA. And I'm also involved behind the scenes with Android Police. So we've got Ryan Thomas Shaw doing excellent work over there. So go give them a watch as well.
I've had Ryan on the show. He does great work. Alex does incredibly well-researched videos. Totally worth subscribing to the XDA channel. Watch the content. It's great stuff. I've known Alex for a long time. He's, like me, a long-time phone guru. So you got to listen to whatever he says on social media. There you go.
Thank you.
And folks, you know where to find me on the internet. I'm at Tankerl, like the comic book Tankerl. Just drop the vowels and you get my handle. Almost everywhere. I'm primarily active on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky, but you'll find me everywhere. I also have a TikTok, TNKGRL69, which is my year of birth. And so I just started that like a couple of months back. So if you're on TikTok, you want to find some stuff, go find me there. The podcast lives at mobiletechpodcast.com. We're on all the major platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube Music. So please subscribe if it's your first time here, especially. I'd appreciate it. Tell your friends about the podcast if you enjoyed it. If your app lets you rate or review the show, please consider doing that. There's a YouTube channel for this podcast as well, youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast. That's where you'll find chunks, extracts of the podcast, some unboxings, some hands-on videos, some reviews every now and then. And you know how YouTube works. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the bell, all that good stuff. If you want to support me, there is a Patreon, patreon.com/Tankerl. That's patreon.com/TNKGRL. For $5 a month, you can get a weekly podcast a day in advance on video. So that's the trick. You get the video version. We show devices. Sometimes I leave extra content because we go overtime. And you get it for $5 a month every week, a day in advance. So consider supporting me with Patreon, patreon.com/TNKGRL. And I want to thank our sponsor, Mint Mobile. So as you know, I'm constantly reviewing multiple phones, and while that's fun, it also means I'm constantly spending a lot of money for wireless service on multiple SIMs. That's where Mint Mobile comes in, and that's who I'm partnering with for today's podcast. If you also want to save money on your wireless service, switch to Mint Mobile. As tech-savvy early adopters, you've probably heard of Mint Mobile before, but let me quickly tell you how awesome their service is. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice any coverage, speed, or data. They're built on the nation's largest 5G network. They keep costs low because they sell direct to you online. They cut out the retail stores and salespeople. Why should you pay more than you have to for access to the same network? In my experience testing phones, Mint Mobile delivers the same data speeds and call quality as the big three for a fraction of the cost. Switching to Mint is super easy. Thanks to their eSIMs, you can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. No more standing around and waiting in line at a big wireless store. You can keep your current device and phone number and easily switch services. And if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, Mint will ship you a new SIM free of charge. All Mint Mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, lightning fast 5G, and free mobile hotspot. Mint will show you how much data you use each month and recommend plans that save you money. Mint also offers a modern family plan that lets you set up a super affordable family plan with as little as 2 lines. Use my link mintmobile.com/mobiletech to get premium wireless starting for $15 a month. That's mintmobile.com/mobiletech. Stop paying more than you need on your wireless bill and start saving big with Mint Mobile. And Alex, thanks so much for joining me right in the middle of moving. I'm sorry about that. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Yeah. And for everyone who can see on video, that is why we have a little bit of a weird setup and also very bad lighting for me this time around.
Fantastic. Folks, we'll have a podcast next week, so stay tuned for that. And of course, we'll have Alex on again in the future. Until then, cheers, everybody.
Have a good one.